Hello and welcome. We are in the second part of the Sicha of Shabbos Parshas Bay and Shabbos Parshas Beshalach, Tafshin Nun Beis, 1992. In this talk, the Rebbe spoke about the position of the Jewish women and the role that they play in bringing Mashiach in connection with the time and the Parsha of Bo and Beshalach. We're up to the second section where we're going to speak about the connection between the passing of the Previous Lubavitcher Rebbe and the passing of a number of Jewish women in connection with Mashiach. So just first, we'll give a quick summary of what we learned in the previous year. In the first part of the Sicha, the Rebbe opens up speaking about the Previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, and how he made a special effort in influencing and encouraging the Jewish women to make their Judaism and their learning of Chassidus their own. And the Rebbe tells us how this is because the Jewish women were very much connected with the coming of Mashiach, and we see how they came first, both in by the giving of the Torah, by Matan Torah, when Hashem told Moshe to speak to the Jewish women first before the men, and also by the giving of donations to the Mishkan, the Jewish women came first, and they gave a special and unique gift. And the fact that the Jewish women didn't partake in the sin of the golden calf shows that they really were impacted by the giving by Matan Torah even more. And the Rebbe continues and explains this idea of the Jewish woman having a unique superiority is also seen in the fact that the Chazal and the Medrash and the Yalkut Shemaini and the Arizal all together give different quotes to explain that it's in the merit of the Jewish woman that the whole nation was redeemed from Mitzrayim, and it will be in the merit of the Jewish woman in the time of Mashiach that the Jewish people will be redeemed from Geulah. And also at the time of Mashiach itself, there will be a unique superiority of the women over the men. So now, in this section, number 2, the Rebbe says that this whole idea is emphasized also in connection with the day of the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz. And the day of one's passing is the completion of their whole mission and avodah in this world, right? The idea that someone's passing away is because they've completed all their work. So how do we see this? In a number of ways. The Previous Lubavitcher Rebbe gave a mimer, a Hasidic discourse, to be printed and published, to be learned in honor of Yud Shvat, and this mimer was separated into a few parts, and each part was to be published and learned at different dates. That was the year Tafshin Yud, which is the year that the Rebbe Rayatz passed away. So before he passed away, he had instructed that this mimer, starting with the pasuk Basi Lagani from Shir Hashirim, should be printed and learned and this was dedicated to his grandmother, Rebbetzin Rivka, who was the wife of the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Her passing was on Yud Shvat. So the previous Rebbe said this mimer should be printed and dedicated to her in honor of her passing. Now, Yud Shvat is actually the passing, and of that year that the Rebbe wanted it to be printed was the day of the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz himself. And the second part of the mimer, which starts with the pasuk Hayesheves Beganim, also from Shir Hashirim, was dedicated to the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Stern Sarah, whose passing was on Yud Gimel Shvat, 50 years earlier. And she was the wife of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe. And the Rebbe points out as well that the passing of Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka, the wife of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the daughter of the Rebbe Rayatz, is within 10 days of the passing of his mother, the Rebbetzin Stern Sarah, also around this time. So we see that the day of the yahrzeit of the Rebbe Rayatz is very much connected with the yahrzeit of 3 special women: his grandmother, his mother, whom the mimer that he had instructed to be learned around the day of his passing was dedicated to, as well as his daughter, who was also the wife of the Rebbe. So like we said earlier, the yahrzeit, the day of one's passing, is very much a completion, expresses the completion of their whole mission and avaida in the world. And the day of the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz expresses the completion of his avaida, which was to prepare the world for Mashiach, which is what he really invested his life to do. So we see this idea of woman and Mashiach connected with this mimer, which he had instructed to be learned on the day of his passing. And we see this a number of ways. Firstly, in the dedications, like we just mentioned, that the mimer itself was dedicated to these women. In the title of, or the first, pasuk that this mimer is based on, and also in the content of the mimer. So the mimer is called Basi Lagani. It's based on the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Basi Lagani Achei Sikala, etc., etc., which is saying, I come to my garden, my sister, my bride, which is referring to the Hashem coming to, it's expressing the love of Hashem to the Jewish people, who he refers to in the feminine form as sister and bride. So we're expressing here the relationship between Hashem and the Jews as a husband and wife, which is in general the whole basis of Shir Hashirim, the analogy between the husband and wife being used to express the love that Hashem has for the Jewish people. The second part of the mimer, which was to be printed and learned at a later date, which was dedicated to Rabbi Stern Asara, is based on the pasuk Hayesheves Baganim Chaverim Makshivim L'Kayle Hashmieni, which is also a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, which is talking about the Maila of the Jewish people, who the Malachim will listen to their voice in the study halls and in the Bete Knesiot. So we hear this idea of the uniqueness and the love that Hashem has to the Jewish people as Knesset Yisrael, as in the feminine form. And when we see this idea of the love that Hashem has to the Jewish people being expressed in these psukim from Shir Hashirim in the feminine form, it also indicates the special and uniqueness of the Jewish women, the feminine among the Jewish people. So we see not just the love Hashem has for the Jewish people as a whole in the feminine form, but the feminine ones among them as well. So we also see this idea of the uniqueness of the Jewish woman in the content of the mimer. The mimer is talking about the mission to bring the Shekhinah down to earth, to reveal godliness in the world and to make the world a home for Hashem. And this is done mainly and in a greater way by the Jewish women. Just to note that this idea of drawing down the Shekhinah to bring the godliness into this world, drawing down the Hamshachas HaShekhinah, was initially accomplished to some degree by Matan Torah and by the Mishkan, where we had spoken about in the previous shir that in those two places where the Jewish women came first and came in a better way. So too in the work to bring the Shekhinah down into the entire world, which will be completed by the coming Mashiach, is also emphasized more by the Jewish women. And we see a presence for this by the Imahais, who had a greater involvement and impact on the world, more so than the Avais. The Avais were a bit aloof and separate from the world to a certain degree, and their impact on the world was done through their wives. And we see this in a practical way from the fact that both Abraham and Yitzchak did not recognize the negativity within their sons Yishmael and Esav. And it was only the Sarah and Rivka who were able to recognize the, practical negative things that were going on by Ishmael and Esav and what needed to be done on a practical level to protect the family. And the Rebbe actually speaks more about this in Sefer Sichas Tavshin Mem Tes and Gimel Kislev, and he references it here in the footnote as well, that the reason why this is because the spiritual source of the Imahais comes from a higher place than the spiritual source of the Avais. And something that is more, that comes from a higher place can reach down much lower. Similar to the idea of Seif Maisa b'machshava tchila, that which comes all the way at the end and can go further comes up first in thought. So in a sense, the spiritual evolution of the world, we have first the spiritual source of the Imahais, which then evolves even lower and has a greater impact on the world. And that's why the Imahais were able to see the world for what it truly is on a practical level, and were able to recognize that the negativity and what needed to be done to refine it and to protect their families, while the Avais were seeing things more in their spiritual source. And therefore, when they looked at Yishmael and Esav, they didn't see the way it played out in the physical world, but they saw more their spiritual source, which is obviously holy and good. So similarly, the Rebbe continues in Sefer Sichas Tavshin Mem Tes, which he references here, that the impact of the Nesiei Chabad, the Rebbeim of Chabad, on the world also was accomplished through and connected with their wives. And this idea of the women being higher in their spiritual source and therefore being able to impact lower in the physical world is something that we're going to see by Mashiach, as we've spoken about, I believe in the previous year, the idea of Nekeva to Seif Gever and Eshes Chayil Teres Baila both represent this idea that the women are going to be seen on a greater level by Mashiach, because by Mashiach they are going to be seen in their source, which is really higher. So on a practical level, what this means is, in other words, the completion of the Avaida, of the Nasi Hadar, the leader of the generation, is also the completion of the Avaida of the entire generation, because Hanasi Hu Hakol, as Rashi says in Parshas Chukas about Moshe Rabbeinu, the Nasi is everything. He encompasses the entire generation. There in Parshas Chukas, it's talking about how Moshe is referred to as Bnei Yisrael, and Bnei Yisrael is referred to as Moshe, because in essence, the leader of the generation encompasses the whole generation. So the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz, expressing the completion of his Avaida in the world, also expresses a certain completion of the Avaida of the entire generation of the time. And this mission, this Avaida, was to bring Mashiach, to prepare the world for Mashiach. And the fact that his passing is connected with the passing of these righteous women expresses that these righteous women and their passing is also very much connected to preparing the world for Mashiach. Now we can add to this whole picture about the passing of Tzaddikim and Tzidkaniyos, which is a completion of their Avaida when they finished, everything they have to do in the world. The passing of a tzaddik is also called a yartzeit, a histalkos, and a hilula, which are all positive terms. A hilula is a wedding. A histalkos means a removal to a higher level, somewhat being elevated higher. As it says in Shir HaShirim, also, again, another pasuk from Shir HaShirim, the Rebbe is bringing in, this is a number of times bringing in this Shir HaShirim, which is, again, talking about the love Hashem has to the Jewish people in reference to the feminine aspect of the relationship. So there the pasuk says, Daidi Yared Laganai, La'argais Habaisem, Lir Ais Baganim, Velilkait Shaishanim, which means that Hashem, my beloved, comes down into the garden to the place of the spices, to shepherd in the garden, and to pick or to gather the roses. Mainly the parts of the pasuk that we're looking at is that the beloved comes down into the garden to pick and to gather the roses. Now, Shoshanim refers to the Jewish people. Shir Shirim Rabbah on this pasuk explains L'salek es hatzadikim shabi Yisrael. To what it means by Lilkot Shoshanim means to L'salek, which means to remove or to elevate, or in a certain sense to pass away. The tzadikim of the Yidden. So to remove and elevate the tzaddikim to a higher level. Once they have completed their avodah of Torah mitzvahs in the world. So it's interesting to point out that it's known that Knesset Yisrael are called Shoshanim, roses. As it says in Shir HaShirim, K'Shoshana bein hachoichem kein rayasi bein habanais. Like a rose among the thorns, so is my beloved among the daughters. So this idea is actually explained in a number of ways, in a number of places. Shir HaShirim Rabbah explains that Hashem comes down to the garden and to the world after 26 generations to see what's going on. That was at the time of the giving of the Torah. And he sees flood after flood after flood. In Dor Enesh there was a flood. In Dor Mabel there was a flood. In Dor Haflaga there was a flood. And these brought many thorns in the world. And then he sees one pink rose. And this is the Jewish people. And he takes it and he smells it and it brings him calm. What is this referring to? This is referring to the giving of the Aseret Dibros, which when the Jewish people said Na'aseh v'nishma, and that for Hashem was like a rose among the thorns, that this whole world, that Hashem says, I saved my garden, that throughout all those generations Hashem kept the world in existence and saved the garden just for the sake of the Torah learning of the Jewish people. And that's like the pleasure that Hashem gets from this one pink rose. That's just one medrash explaining this idea of K'Shoshana bein hachochim kein rayasi bein habanais. But there's actually a number of other explanations on this, and really bringing out the idea of Hashem's love for the Jewish people as a rose. Another one is in each galus, Hashem sees the Yidden like a rose among the thorns as the other nations surrounding her. And this idea is elaborated in Shir HaShirim Rabbah, in Sefer HaLikutim of the Tzemach Tzedek, in Likuti Levi Yitzchak, as well as in Sefer HaMarim Tavkuf Samach Ches. Now it's interesting, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak points out that the Yidden are called Shoshana, and Hashem in Galus is called Shoshan. Shoshana in the feminine is referring to the woman, and Shoshana in the feminine is referring to the Jewish people, and Shoshan in the masculine is referring to Hashem. And the Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, the Rebbe's father, brings a very fascinating and multi-dimensional gematria to connect the word Shoshan, the rose, in the masculine, to the word Elokim, which is the name for Hashem as he is concealed in the world. Like it says that Shoshan refers to Hashem as he is concealed in Galus. And so again, we see this relationship of Hashem and the Jewish people as a husband and wife in a masculine and feminine form, and again bringing out this idea of the feminine in this whole story. On the words Doidi Yard Laganai, like Lulkait Shoshanim, that my beloved goes down into the garden to gather the roses, Shir HaShirim Rabbah says this means to elevate or to bring higher the tzaddikim among the Yidden, among the Jewish people. So the Rebbe points out the connection between the word Shoshanim and the yard site of Rebbetzin Rivka, who, like it says in the Midrash, in Shir HaShirim, that what is she, Rivka, compared to? A Shoshana bein hachoichem, a rose among the thorns. So we see here a connection between Rivka Imenu, who was called a rose among the thorns, and Rebbetzin Rivka, who has the same name, also being referred to as the Shoshana, which is being plucked from the world. And it's also interesting to note that the letters Shoshana, Shin Shin Nun Hey, are found within the name of Rebbetzin Shter Sarah. Also has two shins, a nun and a hey within that name. So here we see an interesting reference to this idea of the tzaddikim who are being taken from the world, referencing Rebbetzin Rivka and Rebbetzin Shana Sarah, who are being spoken about in this talk, specifically as those righteous women who are connected with the Avaida, bringing Mashiach and being taken from the world in part of this greater Eloi and elevation for the sake of something greater, as will be by the time of Mashiach. Time of Tchias HaMesim. As it says in Yeshaya, that they will arise from the dust and sing. Those right, it says, those who lay in the dust shall arise and sing and rejoice. This is talking about Tchias HaMesim, and the tzaddikim, the shaishanim, will be at the head, the leaders of this, resurrection, as souls and bodies in this physical world, where there will be the revelation of the Ikar Shechina, the revelation of Hashem as in this world, as a home for Hashem to be revealed by the Geulah Mitzvah Shlema, the complete and final Geulah. So here we have the idea of the passing of the Previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, being very much connected to the passing of these righteous women, the wives of the Nesiim, and the idea that the passing of a tzaddik is connected to the accomplishment of his entire mission in the world. And so the accomplishment of the Rebbe Rayatz's mission of preparing the world for Mashiach is also connected with the mission of these Jewish women who also passed away at a similar time and who are very much connected to the ideas that are brought out in this mimer of Basi Lagani that was to be dedicated in honor of the passing at that time, and how this is all for the sake of a greater elevation that will be by the time of Mashiach. And it's interesting to point out, and Shira Shirim Rabbah also explains that just as a rose is special for Shabbos and for Yom Tif, so too the tzaddikim are kind of designated for Shabbos, for the day Yom Shekulei Shabbos V'Tov, the time of Mashiach. Just as the roses are set aside for Shabbos and Yom Tif, so too the Yidden and the tzaddikim are designated for the time of Geulah. So now I'd like to do with you the multi-dimensional gematria from Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, the Rebbe's father, just for the sake of interest. It is to show us how the name Elohim, which is the name of Hashem as he is concealed in Golus, is the same gematria as the word Shaishan. So first, let's look at the word Shaishan. Shin is 300, and we have two shins. So 300 plus 300 is 600. Shaishan has a chaylam above and a nun. So the nun is 50, and the vav is 6. So we have 656. That's the gematria of Shaishan. Now, if we take 4 different ways of doing gematria on the name Elohim, it will also come out to 656. The first type of gematria that we're going to do is called Milo Yod, which is spelling out each letter of the name Elohim with the Milo Yod, which means when you spell the letter Hey, there's different ways you can spell it. You can spell it Hey, you can spell it Hey Aleph, you can spell it Hey Yod. So depending on how you spell it, so we're going to spell it with a Yod. So first, the letter Aleph is Aleph Lamed Fei. Aleph Lamed Fei, we have 1, 30, and 80. So Fei is 80, plus Lamed is 30, 80 and 30 is 110, plus Aleph is 111. Add to that Lamed. Lamed, Mem, Daled. Lamed is 30, Mem is 40, Daled is 4. So we have 74. So we have 111 plus 74, that makes 185. Then we have Hey, with Hey and a Yod. Hey and Yod is 15. So that was 185 plus 15, that's 100, it's 200. Then we have Yod. Yod is Yod Vav Daled. Yud is 10, Vav is 6, Dalet is 4, that is equals 20. So 220. Then we have Mem. Mem is spelled with two Mems, Mem Mem. Mem is 40, so we have 240 is 80. 80 plus 220, we now have 300. So the Elohim with a Milo Yud comes out to 300. Let's put that aside. Now, we're going to do another gematria on the name Elohim, and that's called Rivua 200, which is the name Elohim squared equals 200. How do we get that? So, first we take the simple gematria of the name Elohim. Aleph and Lamed is 31, plus Hey is 36, plus Yud is 46, plus Mem is 86. Okay, so Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Mem for 86. Now take 86 and add the integers together. It's called a mispar katan. Another form of gematria, mispar katan. You add the 8 and the 6 together, and you get 14. Now that's the mispar katan of the name Elohim. Now we take that and we square it. 14 squared. 14 times 14 is 196. Then we add to that the amount of letters in the name Elohim. Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yod, Mem. We have 5 letters. 196 plus 5 is 201. Now, 201, and we subtract 1 for the Geulah, which is a rule in gematria. You can always add or subtract 1 for the entire word. So we'll bring that down to 200. Okay, so we said the first type of gematria we did, Milo Yod, was 300. The second type of gematria of Rivua Elohim squared is 200, so that makes 500. Next, the next type of gematria is going to be the simple, plain old gematria like we all do. Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Mem, gematria 86. So we're going to add to that 500. We're going to add to that 86. Now we have 586. And the next thing we're going to do is the nekudas. Now in gematria, each nekuda, each dot of nekudas represents 10. So if we take the Aleph has a Chatav Segel. Chatav Segel is a Shva with a Segel, which ends up being 5 dots. 5 dots, each one representing 10, that's 50. Then we have a Chaylam dot, which is another 10, and a Chirik dot, which is another 10. So you end up with 70. So now we have 586 plus 70 is 656. And there we see, with these multi-dimensional gematrias on the name Elohim, 656, which is the same gematria as Shaishan, 666, which represents the idea that the word Shaishan, the masculine rose, is alluding to the Hashem as he is in Galus. And that is the insight of the Rebbe's father on this idea of connecting the Jewish people with the feminine aspect of the relationship and the Hashem in the masculine aspect of the relationship. And now in the next lesson, we're going to learn of the connection to the connection of the passing of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe with the Parshas Bai, and the connection of this again to the Jewish women in their unique way of with bringing the light of Hashem in the world through Shabbos candles.